want you to be sure that you're taking notes with this today. Feel free to pause this screen recording as you are getting all the information that you need, and I would be sure that you're saving these notes. Today's topic is a complete count, the United States Census. We're going to talk today about what the census is and how it affects decisions that are made in our country. Let's go with the who, what, when, where, why, how, all that good stuff. Kind of a good way to introduce it here. Little snapshot for you. What is the census? It is a count of every single person in the United States. So therefore that takes care of our who. Every living person in our country must be counted, both citizens. You've lived here your whole life, whether you're an illegal alien, whether you're a person visiting the United States for an extended period of time. For instance, I had friends from other countries when I was in college at Michigan State. All of those people would be counted within our U.S. Census. For the why, the United States Constitution requires a national census, this population count, to be taken every 10 years. Census data are used to basically reapportion congressional seats to states and affect distribution of federal funding. What this reapportionment means, remember that we've been talking in this unit about the House of Representatives. It's based on population. Remember we talked about with the Electoral College that Michigan actually lost an electoral vote because we didn't have as much of a gain in population. We may even have lost part of our population. So this census helps to determine how many House of Representatives members each state has. When did it take place? Census Day was April 1st, 2010. That was our last one anyway. That's when it started. Where was it? Every state in the United States. Every person living, whether you're living in an apartment building or a luxurious mansion that you'd see on Cribs, it doesn't matter. You get one of these mailed to you and you have to fill it out. How does this happen? Forms were delivered or mailed in March of 2010. The questionnaire assistance centers, the QAC, were available for those unable to read, understand, or complete the form. The census itself is actually available in a variety of different languages. So, even if you don't speak English, even if you can't read, the census people make sure that they have a way to count you. Be counted sites were available in select communities, locations for those who did not receive a form or for those who were without housing. So even if you are a homeless person, like let's say you're in an inner city, they're going to come around and they're going to count you as part of the population. Be counted forms were also available at these questionnaire assistance centers. And again, I hope you're not writing everything down here, but again, translate this to whatever works best for you and shorten this down. The Census Bureau relies heavily on volunteers. In fact, a member of my own family, one of my second cousins, she actually participated in this. She's retired, and she had a blast just going door to door, making sure that people had been counted. Key dates for the 2010 census, and again, I won't have information on our next census, which will be in 2020, because that's obviously quite a few years away. Verifying the 2010 census address list, April through July of 2009. So the government prepares by trying to figure out where people live, getting addresses, looking up all that information to send out the forms. Delivery of the forms again in March of 2010. Final counts delivered to the President of the United States on December 31st of 2010. Redistricting counts delivered to states. So from February to March of 2011, Michigan went from having 15 members of the House to only having 14. So again, that reapportionment of the House of Representatives is completely based on how much population each state has. Now some of you would probably ask, Mr. Basin, I don't want to fill this out. My parents don't want to fill this out. I'm just not going to fill it out. The government, I don't want them knowing this about me. I don't want them knowing where I live. I don't want them knowing what my job is. I don't want them knowing how old I am or what color my skin is or what gender I am. I don't want them to know any of that. If you choose not to fill out the census, you could have a $100 fine or a $500 fine for purposefully answering questions falsely. So if you don't complete it, or if you switch your answers, there are penalties for doing that. And, if they're asking you to fill out your name, you have to do it. Now, that doesn't mean if someone comes to your house and wants to know all your information that I recommend doing that. No, our next census won't be until 2020. So someone comes knocking on your door asking for all that information, I would hope that you don't give it to them. But be sure that in 2020, you guys obviously will be a little bit older. You may even be the head of your own household. That is pertinent information that you have to give out. Complete and accurate count. Why is complete and accurate count important? Every year the federal government distributes more than 400 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. Think about how much money that is to state and communities based on census information. The federal government distributes money for roads, distributes money for post offices, distributes money for all these government agencies, and they have to know how much money they can spend in each place. And a lot of that's based on population. Obviously, a big city is going to get more of those funds, like a Detroit or a Grand Rapids, than a Stanton or a Sheridan, who don't have as much population, and we don't need as much money as those places. Also, community planners and local governments rely heavily on census data to make the case for providing critical social services. In other words, we gain an understanding for how many community programs we need, how many stoplights we need, how many court systems we need, how many different agencies we need in different places based on the population of an area. And that's what this census information gives to us. An accurate census count helps to determine planning and construction of facilities, transportation, like a public busing system, community-based healthcare initiatives, programs, etc. Census data also can determine how many seats each state will have in the House of Representatives, which we've already talked about. This next bullet point here, and I want you to really take note of this, doesn't mean you have to feel this way, but some people do for sure. Some people consider the census to be an invasion of their privacy. There are many people who believe it is none of the United States' business, with certain things that they ask you in the census, because the questions that are asked. You could be asked about your race, your telephone number, your relationship to the people in your household. And, that could absolutely be considered an invasion of privacy. Now, some people do, some people don't. Census form. Easy. It's one of the shortest census forms in history. They really tried to make the process more simple and less annoying to people. I remember my parents filling this out in the year 2000, and they were none too happy about having to fill it out. But I guess it only takes approximately 10 minutes to complete our most recent census. So there's, I guess, more of a recommitment, I guess you would say, to making the process easier for people to do. Important census information helps determine funding, as we've talked about, for all these different things, including our local school system. The state and federal governments, based on the population of our school, give us money. In fact, at school, we have a few times a year what's called a count day. And basically, we receive money from the state of Michigan for each kid we have enrolled in our school. But on those count days, they actually count how many students are there. And so that's why it's very important that you show up to school, because the school district gets money for you. And the more students we have, the nicer things we can have for our schools. Also, obviously, some of these monies go to roads, hospitals, and much, much more. By law, the Census Bureau cannot share respondents' answers with anyone. So even though many of these even though many of these pieces of information are personal, the Census Bureau, the government that gets this information from you, legally cannot share it with anyone, including other federal agencies and even law enforcement. So it's not like they can share this with the police. All Census Bureau employees take an oath of non-disclosure. So if you work for the Census Bureau, you have to take an oath, and you are sworn for life to protect the confidentiality of the data. In other words, you can't start giving out information that you find about other people. Taking an oath really makes that a lot more official. The penalty for unlawful disclosure is a fine of $250,000, $250,000, or imprisonment for up to 5 years, or both. So you can tell the Census Bureau definitely works very hard to make sure that your confidentiality is kept to the highest degree. Again, I mean, if you're working for the Census Bureau and you give out that information, $250,000 or 5 years in prison, those are pretty stiff penalties, that you might have to pay. So definitely dissuades people from doing so. Caregivers of people with disabilities can actually complete the census form for those unable to do it themselves. Um, so even if a person isn't physically able to do it, there are ways to ensure that every person in this country is accounted for. And then you can see here just other additional resources that are available, and you can kind of read those on your own. And that's going to be the end of our census PowerPoint. Tomorrow you will be doing a little bit of more reading about what the census is, and you'll have some questions to fill out with that, and you will actually be completing a census form. And so you'll kind of get to see what that process is like, because again, in the year 2020, most of you will be heads of household, and you'll be filling that out on your own. If you have any questions on this, be sure you let me know, and I would be happy to help you in any way that I can. Thank you much.